Hey guys, happy Monday. I'm going to try to make this brief today, but there are some really important things happening in the book right now. And as quality readers, we are really starting to really learn some stuff by making these connections with these characters, with the conflicts, placing ourselves in the mix, and really trying to analyze what it is that these characters are learning. See, one of the most powerful things we have available to us as readers is the words and situations of others. We can actually learn some really amazing life lessons just through the experiences of others, even fictional people, made-up people. And that's what's really powerful about being able to change who we are just from reading a book of somebody else's experiences. See, this is really basic, but I don't need to get hit by a car to know that it's a good idea to look both ways before I cross the street. See, that lesson has already been learned, and because that lesson has already been learned, I don't have to make the mistake in order to change my actions based on that outcome. Similarly, as the good readers that we are now, filling in our organizers, making those connections, and thinking these things that we think through the fire journal prompts, we are really starting to take on these situations and learn from Sal, learn from Phoebe, learn from all these different characters who are going through really rough circumstances, and we're able to now alter our own lives and our own actions as though we had to live through these horrible experiences that Sal and Phoebe and all these characters are, but we didn't actually have to go through them. See, that's super powerful about literature, and I want you guys to remember that. That's why we do what we do. That's why we try to read instead of just read. Right? So, after you took your Words of the Week quiz, you guys got into this fire starter that I put on the board. Sometimes you know in your heart that you love somebody, but you have to go away for a while before your head can figure it out. Why does Graham say this to Sal? Do you agree with this statement? I told you if you wanted to, you could share a personal story there from your own life about maybe somebody who used to be in your life who's not anymore, and kind of what that does to your thinking. And we'll get to something that you read for your homework, which is up through chapter 31, which remember, the audio is going to be posted right down below. And I encourage you to listen along if reading is something that's very difficult for you, but remember that you're following along with your eyes, because studies show that that's the best way to become a more fluent reader. You're an expert reader, and follow along with your eyes. It's down below, but we got to some pretty gnarly stuff towards the end of what you read for homework tonight that really just totally opens our minds as people. And it's really great stuff. How does this quote relate to Sal's life? How about Phoebe's? Our discussion was mostly about how sometimes we don't really think about how we're treating somebody, or we don't really think about what we're doing or our actions until it's too late. And then, just like Sal, we go, oh gosh, I wish that wasn't the last memory this person had of me. See, our words are very powerful. And actually, if you follow football at all, you'll know that the Miami Dolphins are in some very big trouble because of really hurtful, hateful words that they said that I bet they wish they could take back. And people are getting suspended, people are leaving the team, people might be arrested. Actions and words are very powerful. It's one thing to joke around, but even in your joking around, be careful, because your words are very powerful and your actions are very powerful. Just because you think you're joking around doesn't mean everybody does. And people can be very hurt by what you say, what you do. Sal and Phoebe are finding this out the hard way, aren't they? Their moms left as a result of what they were feeling based on other people's actions. Now granted, in Sal's case, the actions and words from the family in general is mostly good, but Sal is remembering all the awful stuff that she said to Mom the day before she left, and saying, wow, this is what's really stuck in her head. Phoebe is now noticing all the great stuff that Mrs. Winterbottom did for the family, and realizing how she treated her, but she's not willing to change herself at all. So you've got two different people handling the situation differently, and we see that one person is making it way more difficult for themselves and on all the people around them based on her actions and her choices. Remember, life is all about choices, and your choices have consequences. More lessons that we're learning from this book just by connecting with the book. Now I've got a couple spots I want to stop at for what you read for your homework and for what we did today in class a little bit. But I want to start by looking at this notion of Pandora's box and how she wasn't supposed to open it. We have the same type of story in the Garden of Eden in Judeo-Christian Old Testament readings about how they weren't supposed to eat the forbidden fruit, the apple, and they did, and they couldn't take it back, and they couldn't take the actions back, just like Pandora couldn't close the box as all the evils in the world were escaping. Now, what we do have in all of these stories that kind of try to explain why there's evil in the world and why bad things happen and why this and that, all of them make very certain to indicate that there was a choice present that had consequences. And yet, in the middle of all of these consequences, there's one thing that Pandora, Adam and Eve, everybody who's in this type of situation where they've made choices and have to deal with consequences, there is an option, and it's always illustrated that there's an option. You are in control of yourself, and nobody and nothing else. We get the opportunity to set our mind on something. And our mindset indicates how our actions are going to be. So if you set the bar really low, if you say, I'm going to fail, I'm going to this, I'm going to that, it's going to happen. You're going to live that out because that's the expectation you've set for yourself. We've talked about this a lot throughout the course of the year. When you set your expectations higher, you tend to move towards a higher place. There's hope in the box for Pandora, at the bottom of this box of evil, because if it weren't for that hope that's at the bottom of that box, how would we be expected to survive all that other evil, all those other bad things without hope? Why would we get out of bed in the morning? But hope is a choice. Nothing can give us hope. We have to see hope, feel hope, choose hope instead of despair. Very important lessons that we're learning through these other people who aren't even real, just by being good readers and attempting to answer questions that come up as a result of the literature. I hope you're noticing how involved you are in this book. If you pick this up, chances are you might not be terribly involved in it. If you used your old self as a reader. See, being new readers now and looking at these with new eyes, we are able to come up with all this great stuff that's really meaningful and really powerful that can really change our lives. We need to keep that up. I'm going to move now to the chapter entitled Breaking In. It's chapter 30, so it's well into your homework reading. But Phoebe and Sal have a conversation that I think really hits home for me, and I'm actually going to read it to you out of this. Sal says, Phoebe, you know when you said that your mother would never leave without an explanation? Well, she might. A mother might do that. Phoebe said, my mother wouldn't. My mother loves me. Sal says, but she might love you and still not have been able to explain. I was thinking about the letter my mother left me, Sal confesses to us. Sal says to Phoebe, maybe it would be too painful for her to explain. Maybe it would seem too permanent. Phoebe says, I don't know what in the world you're talking about. Sal says, she might not come back, Phoebe. Shut up, Sal, says Phoebe. She might not. I just think you should be prepared. Sal makes a very good point. Sal is starting to learn from her own situation and trying finally to be a good friend to Phoebe and say, Phoebe, prepare yourself. Hope, yes, keep those hopes high. But also prepare yourself. See, there's a difference between preparation and expectation. Preparing for a worst-case scenario is totally fine. Expecting that to happen is to rob yourself of the only thing you're in control of, a positive attitude, a positive outlook, that hope that was in Pandora's box. This conversation where we see Sal finally trying to help Phoebe out. Now Phoebe's not quite taking it just yet. She's saying, "You're being terrible, Sal. Don't say these things. Don't say these things. It's not going to happen." It's good to hope that it's not going to happen and to set an expectation that, yes, this is going to come back to me. But again, preparation, just in case it doesn't, is every bit as important because it's your mindset. It's the only thing you're in control of is you. Your mindset can determine your attitude. I know some really joyful, happy people who are in the middle of some really hard things in their lives because who they are is separate from their circumstances. That's an important lesson we can learn from this book and from life. See, we can choose how we react to things. We can choose our words. We can choose our interactions. We can't choose how the world treats us or the circumstances we face. We can only control ourselves in these. If we choose positive, and positive outlook, positivity in general, we wind up in a much more positive place because we've set that as ourselves and who we expect to be. Moving on to the first page of chapter 31. We get another quote from the lunatic. This lunatic, by the way, sounds like the most sane person in the book so far. There's been some really awesome quotes from that this lunatic has left. It says, "We never know the worth of the water until the well is dry." So we talked about wounding words before, because Sally even said some pretty hurtful stuff to Phoebe when she got upset with Phoebe. Remember, words are something you can't take back. Sometimes you wish you could. Especially knowing the worth of the water. If we wind up saying and doing things that drive people away from us, we wind up in a position like Sal or Gramps, where we say sometimes you know in your heart that you love somebody, but you have to go away for a while before your head can figure it out. You don't know what you got till it's gone. You don't know the worth of the water, the value of the water, until you're so thirsty, you're so parched, and you don't have that water anymore. This lunatic is starting to sound like the wisest person in the book. Sal and Phoebe and all of these people have learned that maybe their actions and their words, they should have been more careful about. Because now that they don't have that person or that thing in their life anymore, they're starting to realize how valuable it was and how little they appreciated it. Again, we learn these lessons through these people. Appreciate what you have, who you have around you. Share with them. Don't mistreat them. Don't say bad things to them. Don't say hurtful things. We know how to hurt the people the closest to us in life. That doesn't mean we should. That doesn't mean we should. We should value them and cherish them because one day they're not going to be there anymore. Don't wait until the water's gone to know the worth of the well that you had, that the water came in. Fantastic stuff. One last thing, right at the end of chapter 31, which is what you had to read through for homework, we find out who the lunatic is. I'm not going to spoil it right here, because hopefully you did the reading. We find out who the lunatic is. So if you're just watching me and you're like, I'm not going to read the chapters, read the chapters. Because on the last page of 31, we find out who this lunatic is. Whoa. Lots of stuff happening, guys. Thank you so much for visiting. Thank you so much for being quality, active readers. And chances are you're thanking yourself for being a quality, active reader right now.
Good afternoon,
Because
warriors.
you're learning some stuff.
We just want to let you know
Have a
which
great
books
day,
are
guys.
currently here. If you're about to school, please remain in your classroom until you are dismissed.